On today's show, we wind the clock back to 2010 and head to Sydney Motorsport Park. We go into endurance mode as we look back on the fourth round of the Australian Manufacturers Championship from the 2010 Shannons Nationals, the Dial Before You Dig Australian 6 Hour. All the big names of production car racing are taking part in the 25-car strong field, along with some star names of Australian motor racing. Plus, we bring you some added 6-cylinder Holden and Ford action from the Super 6 Touring Car Series. This is Speedweek.
Hello and welcome to round 6 of the 2010 Shannons National Series, putting the Australian Manufacturers Championship to its biggest challenge yet with the Dial Before You Dig 6-hour enduro. Teams have been working around the clock fine-tuning strategies, but a big question mark hangs over tyre wear and fuel consumption. Plenty to unfold here at Eastern Creek, but first it's time to say g'day to Richard Crail in commentary.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Eastern Creek Raceway looking a treat. The weather is perfect and some happy, relaxed teams and drivers coming off the grid, but they've got a long day ahead of them in the office. Well, today, over the course of this very long race, I'll be joined in commentary by both Dave Knoll and an expert commentator, Marcus Sikanovic. Good morning, welcome to you.
Thank you, Richie. It's great to be here. Looking forward to it.
What's the mindset you take before one of these races? You've done them before, you're experienced at this. What sort of mindset have you got now, just moments before the start?
Well, you're just sitting there in the car, you know, your helmet's on, and you're just sitting there relaxed, and you're just trying to think, okay, I want to just get through these next couple of laps unscathed from the start of the race, where I can get myself into a really nice rhythm and hopefully have a clean race and no hiccups.
Well, this is the racetrack where we'll hopefully be hiccup-free over the course of 6 hours. 3.9 kilometres, 12 turns, one of the more flowing, fastest racetracks in Australia. Our show for today is going to be John Bowe, and Marcus will talk away around this lap, but this is one of the great racetracks in Australia.
It's fantastic. It's actually one of my tracks right up there with the likes of Bathurst and Phillip Island, so let's watch John and see how he goes.
So this is turn one of the fastest corners in the country.
It's a great turn. You're probably approaching through here at about 170, 180 kilometres an hour.
Up to turn 2, heavy braking zone, and one of a few good passing opportunities here. This and turn 9, probably the two best places perhaps to fire one up the inside and try and get a move done.
We'll definitely see some action here. It's quite tight. It's probably second gear corner. You really want to try and get a late apex and get a good drive out to get your next run into turn 3.
And this next sequence of corners, 4, 5 and 6, all very flowing. Got to be smooth, don't you?
Very smooth. It's definitely the critical part of the circuit around the back here, where you need to try and get nice late apexes but keep the car very settled and lots of corner speed.
John Bowe, the king of smooth, the turbocharged 3-litre straight 6 in the BMW, singing along round the back of Corporate Hill. Bit of time to be found here, I think, Marcus, as well, through this tricky left-right chicane, then a couple of long, fast corners round the back of the hill.
The trick is trying to get the car stable in the brakes at that previous corner we just saw, which helps you get a good drive up the hill once you get the power down, and bring it around this left-hander here down in the Corporate Hill. Nice deep under brakes, probably another great opportunity for passing. We should see lots of action here this weekend too.
Of course, this isn't the first time we've seen a long-distance production car race here at Eastern Creek. Go back to 1995. John Bowe, this man, and Dick Johnson won the 12-hour race here in a Mazda RX-7. Marcus, these last two corners critical, especially turn 12, because that front straight's so long.
It is indeed. Obviously, the straight being so long, you really need to get, again, it's another late apex, but you really need to get the drive off the turn so you can get maximum speed at the end of the straight.
And this is the straight in question, almost a K long, very fast, and that's Eastern Creek Raceway, the scene of the Dial Before You Dig, Australian 6 Hour. Well, there's some great pageantry before long-distance races, always fun before the serious action begins. Everyone's ready, Marcus. The field is set. What's your tip for this one?
after seeing John Bauer's qualifying result, you know, we know the car's got some history and pace. It's, I think it's going to be a tough one to beat this weekend.
Well, there's the tip from the expert. Well, Shannons continue their fantastic support of the Nationals in 2010. They've got a great presence at every round of the championship, but here at the Dial Before You Dig 6 Hour, they've gone to the max. The Shannons Super Rig is here, and we caught up with Shannons Insurance Paul Gates to find out more.
We've just celebrated 2 years of having the rig on the road. It's covered about 80,000 kilometres and done about 120 events in that period. So we're very proud of the reaction that we've got from it and the impact that it's had on the market. Over that period of time, we've had some 300,000 to 400,000 people go through the truck, which is actually phenomenal. So there's several things that they can do. There's some great old footage on the TV screens in there, some classic Australian ads to some motorsport features. And out on the balcony here, then you've got the 2 simulators that are running with PlayStation on them.
And where are you headed to next? You go all across the country?
Yeah, look, it's actually just come back from Darwin, had a month in Darwin and come back down through Queensland. So it's done Adelaide, Melbourne, Brisbane, through all of the country areas in that time. And about to leave here this weekend and heads to Perth. So it'll be in Perth for all of August.
And now, if it didn't look miniature enough on its own, standing next to the Super Rig, the Go-Go Mobile is here as well.
Yeah, and the Go-Go Mobile lives on the truck, so it travels around everywhere with it, and we pull it out, and that's a huge hit. So we call the truck, if you see on the top there, it's called Go-Go's Big Daddy, and there's a sign that we put there, and that's a classic.
It's amazing the frenzy that it still garners over the years.
Look, it is. It's an iconic little vehicle starting off from our ads many years ago, and people just love it. So it's probably one of the most photographed cars in Australia, I'd reckon, because people just love taking the photos and being in the car.
Well, there'll be more from the Dial Before You Dig Australian 6 Hour coming up very soon. But first, the premier support category to the main race. It's round 4 of the Australian Saloon Car Series. We're coming off the back of an action-packed round at Winton Motor Raceway. And this one, Dave Knoll, should be just as good. The man of the moment, Sean Jamieson, goes from pole position.
Geez, he's done a sensational job this season, the Morpeth Vale garage entry. No wonder he's got the number 1 on the side of the car. A few other names out there, Alf Casella, one of the few females in the category too. Rich Kelly Stevens in the Melwood Automotive, number 70.
Yeah, up from Victoria, Joel Spicella, the former open wheel ace from P16, down to Tim Rouse from the back of the grid dramas in race 2. The man that rebounded so well at Winton recently has it all to do in this one as we get underway for race 3 here at Eastern Creek Raceway. 2 races held on Saturday. Action-packed as always. Jamo came through and won both of them as we ride with Joel Spicella in the Dial Before You Dig Falcon.
Yeah, didn't have a really good start off the line. Appeared like it either bogged or missed a gear or something, but he managed to pick it up by around turn 2, I think.
Big learning curve, trying to get these cars underway. A big step up from open wheel racing, especially for Joel, and trying to come to grips with a more door handle to door handle style of racing. Holden versus Ford, Bridgestone control tyres and a new Rodney Jane racing wheel on board these cars as well. We've got pictures from Jeff Brown's car right in the thick of the action as he's been all season long, looking for a move up the inside. Now, we should note the car of Nathan Geary, the Queenslander, has actually not been able to take the start. His car's been pushed to the side off the start-finish line.
Yeah, a bit of a disappointment for him in that respect. The car had run fairly well up until this morning. Obviously, one of those little 50-cent gremlins that decided to make itself known overnight.
Well, he started this one from 3rd place on the grid. Well, tried to start it anyway, so not the ideal sort of circumstance for him. Nevertheless, he'll live to fight another day. Tame opening lap so far, I've got to say, from the Australian Saloon Car Series. Jamo out in front, leading the way, looking to rebound from a very tough round at Winton Motor Raceway, where he was excluded from race 2, did not start race 3, and cost him a lot in the championship points situation. Dane out in front, Jamo second. He's coming under pressure though, side by side, round towards turn 12. There's some more saloon car stuff, bit of fisticuffs, side by side.
Yeah, a little bit of hip and shoulder never goes astray, does it, in the saloon cars. Keep an eye out for Alf Casella as well, driving one of the very few EA model Falcons left in the category.
Should mention Simon Tabernahl, who won round 3 at Winton, not starting any of the races this weekend. The flywheel sheared the bolts off the back of the flywheel in qualifying, and did not take part in races 1 or 2, nor this one. So a massive drama for our series leader. That's going to cost him a huge amount going into the second half of this series here. Whoa, Tim Rouse, very, very wide at speed at turn 1 and holds onto it.
Gee, the Velcro straps on the tyres really let go for that one. Tim Rouse going out very, very wide. A little bit of gardening coming up as a result. Managed to hold it to get it back on track. Didn't lose any track position either, Rich.
There goes Jamo. He hits the lead. Oh, no, dramas. That's a massive crash.
Wow, what has happened here? We'll come back to that in just a second. Well, that's some serious damage to somebody.
Yeah, that's a massive impact, Dave. Safety car, boards and flags out already, as you would. I'm wondering if there was contact at the start-finish line with Geary's car that was parked to the side of the racetrack in the shadow of the main grandstand. I think another car's made contact with that as they came through to complete lap one. Cars slowing down. Jeff Brown right out of the throttle. You can see the yellow flags at the flag posts. A safety car is out. That is a massive impact though. And word through that the car is Dean Kelland. So he's had some contact on the start-finish straight and has been turned around into the car that was parked on the side of the racetrack.
Of all the luck, we've had Nathan Geary's car running fairly well. There's Dean Kelland.
Oh, that's good news. He's out of the car.
Yeah, Geary's car's been running fine. As I said, for some reason the car decided to die on the line. They've pushed it off to where they thought was going to be a safe spot. Have a look at that. Obviously, it appears Kelland's been tagged. He's spun the car around, dragged it along the wall, and if luck would have it, Rich, unbelievable, he's gone reverse straight into the rear of the broken down Geary car.
So that race has been officially abandoned. Too much drama to continue. We're not too far away now. Smiling, happy faces on the grid for the Dial Before You Dig Australian 6 Hour. Earlier on, we sent Mark Fletcher down to catch up with some of the leading contenders.
Peter O'Donnell, welcome, mate.
Thanks, Fletch.
Sorry to get you on the way to you just filling up your lolly cup there.
You can't do a long-distance race without some lollies in the ashtray or somewhere you can grab them during the race. Keeps you going.
You've got to keep the sugar up. Peter, how do you think you'll go here today? Problems, if any? What's your biggest concern at this stage?
I guess this distance race on this track in these cars is a total unknown quantity. Everyone seems to be reasonably concerned about tyre wear, and I think that's a real issue. We've all got to go a bit gentle on them for starters, and still do quick races. I mean, we're going to be out there competing and trying to conserve things the best we can. I think our fuel usage is going to be to our advantage. Our tyre use at this stage, an unknown quantity.
Lucky enough now to have the Quinn family. We've got Quinn Senior, Quinn Junior. Mate, how do you feel at this stage?
Oh, good. Very natural. Very natural state of mind at 10 o'clock in the morning.
You look a little natural.
Yes. I haven't seen my hair yet, but it's probably natural.
It's looking okay, mate. Just a bit more product there to the left-hand side. You'll be fine.
We're all about natural.
Quinn Senior, what's your thoughts on the day so far? So early, it hasn't even kicked off yet. What's your thoughts for the whole event?
Oh, I think it'll be a good event. I think there's a whole bunch of good drivers here, good cars, good teams. It'll be a fairly competitive event, I think.
Inky, there's nothing worse than when you're just about to start a big race and there's a camera put in your face, mate, and a presenter asks how you're going to go today.
Well, the theory of it is we're going to run 6 hours. That's got to be the ultimate outcome. Where we finish will depend on tyre wear.
Inky, how do you feel? Are you obviously you're pumped up. Are you a little nervous?
I've been doing it a long time. As you get a bit older, I think you get a bit more laid back. But always nervous. I mean, if you're not on the case. But I find it's just, in some ways, you're better to try and relax. Constantly tell yourself, just relax, cool it, and it goes better.
Garth, for a fair way up the grid on starting, for a 6 hour race, is it all that important?
No, I don't think it's too important. We'll just try and stay out of trouble in the first couple of laps and put down a couple of good laps, and then hopefully it'll sort itself out from there.
Has the BMW 130 been behaving itself to this point?
It's been very well behaved. I've been very proud of it so far.
Well, here we go. All the preparation is complete. Cars are on the circuit. They're on their formation lap. And we're getting set for the start of the inaugural Dial Before You Dig Australian 6 Hour, part of the Shannons National Motor Racing Championships for 2010. Dave Knoll with me for the start of this as we take a look at the grid. A commanding performance in quali, Dave. Stuart Costera and Warren Luff will go from pole.
Gee, haven't they nailed it? The car has been absolutely sensational over the last day or two. They've really got it pretty well set up. Right next door, though, a couple of old stages in the form of Peter O'Donnell and a bloke you might have heard of, John Bowe.
Class leaders include Jake Camilleri and Scott Nicholas in the Mazda 3 MPS. Also Gary Holt, fastest in Class D, with Ryan McLeod, his co-driver this weekend in the Holden Astra. Very competitive field, massive field, lots of drivers. We're set for a start. 6 hours at Eastern Creek. We're underway, and everyone away cleanly. We're just going to settle in and get relaxed for the first stage of this race.
On board with Rob Barrett, the head of Ford Performance Vehicles. A great worm's eye view of the first turn here at Eastern Creek, probably travelling at around 160, 170 Ks.
In the FPV F6 Turbo, quick race car, had a good run, the Armor All 12 hour at Bathurst earlier this year. Starting a little bit further down than they would have liked, but should be able to match it with the big V8 Commodores over the course of this 6-hour race here at a very sunny Eastern Creek. About 18 degrees ambient, 20 degrees on track for the start of this very long motor race.
Yeah, certainly a good opportunity for the first couple of laps of drivers to get an idea of what the conditions are like and then settle themselves down into that racing rhythm they're going to need over the next 6 hours.
Team VIP Pet Foods, we are on board with the Evo 9 Lancer. Quick car, fast in qualifying, and they've got a predetermined race pace they're just going to work to, and hopefully they can put some pressure, for their sake at least, on the TMR Lancers, which have been so strong, not just in qualifying and practice for this race, but also throughout the Australian Manufacturers Championship this year, from Bathurst to Symmons Plains, then to Mallala, a couple of 1 hour races, to Phillip Island, sorry, some 1 hour races there, very competitive. The Evos have been dominant though. They have had some tyre issues, and that's going to be the big story of today.
Yeah, the question's going to be the tyre wear because of the predominantly right-hand turns. There's going to be a lot of load on the right-hand tyres, especially, Rich, on the front right.
On board with one of the Osborne Motorsport Mazda 3 MPS as well. Opening lap drivers, the Bob Holden, Justin Matthews, little Toyota Echo, the smallest car in the field, hoping to get through this race on just 2 pit stops.
He was watching a drift show before he got onto the racetrack, that's what it was.
Now here we go, end of lap 1. This is for position. The Quins and the Walls, father and son combinations, the two of them. David and Des Wall sharing the Allen East Motorsport, the bright orange and yellow Evo Lancer behind them. Tony and Clark Quinn. And one of the TMR Lancers, the second of the West Surfing Products car, looking up the inside. Argy Bargy for a 6-hour race. Aggressive driving. Matt Cherry on board the Glen Crimp West Surfing Products car.
He just had to breathe in a little bit to get that one through nice and safely, didn't he? Could have been a little bit untidy, managed to do it pretty well. Some great onboard vision once again, heading down towards the S's here. Have a look at this one, folks. It's a little bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, now this is an interesting story. The Conroy Motorsport Honda Integra Type S, running in Class D, had the bonnet pins come undone in the warm-up session, smashed the windscreen. Now, of course, regulations state you can't run if you've lost your front windscreen, you can't have a rear one. Now, that's a pretty innovative solution, I reckon. Take the hatch off and should be right to go, I would have thought.
That's what you call drive-through air conditioning.
Well, it's lucky it's a nice day here at Eastern Creek Raceway, because otherwise it'd be mighty uncomfortable. I think Terry Conroy might want the tinted visor for the last half of this race when the sun sets over Western Sydney.
And the full face helmet as well, today you get a mouthful of bugs.
I tell you what, dramas early in the race though. A car that we thought would be very competitive on an outright level in Class D, if not as fast as the Astra, certainly quicker than some of the other cars in the class, and perhaps capable of running with it. Like this one, the safety stop Renault Clio, Richard Gardner, Mr. Excitement. And I'm not just making that nickname up, he's actually got it written under his name on the side of the car. Loves his motor racing, Richard Gardner, and the little Renault has had a very good year so far.
Yeah, he's a kind of bloke you don't need a cattle prod to get any excitement out of. Very, very enthusiastic driver and really loves his motorsport, doesn't he?
A bit further back towards the end of the top 10, the Jim Hunter Racing Subaru, Gavin Bullis, two-time and defending Touring Car Masters champion, and Barton Moore, the open wheel ace, behind the wheel there. Then some of the V8s dicing with the Class C cars. Jake Camilleri in the Mazda 3 MPS. And Steve Briffer and Christian de Gostin, Dave, will share the number 8 car today.
Yeah, sharing the driving duties of this lovely HSV, and really looking to see if they can get up and towards the top 5 and show what the Evos, what a V8 can do.
Yeah, they've been struggling with tyres again. Big heavy car and a lot of pressure on those tyres this weekend, and they're running a harder compound than they used to, so they don't quite have the ultimate speed, but they think they might have longevity, so we'll see how that combination goes. We're on board with Tony and Clark Quinn. Tony starting the race in the VIP Pet Foods Evo 9.
Great indication of the turn of speed. You can get down this kilometre-long main straight here at Eastern Creek. 3.9 kilometres all round, and a kilometre down the main straight there, Rich. A fantastic view, isn't it?
Bit of an uncomfortable bump there as well on turn-in as they get into that first corner. Very important part of the racetrack, turn 2. I've already seen some overtaking. Quinn looking back up the inside of the West car that barged his way past at the end of lap 1. And this should be a strong combination too. The East Holiday Park's Evo 9, David and Des Wall. championship winning year last year for the Wall family. David, the Australian GT champion. Des Wall, the Australian sports sedan champion. So a pretty successful year. Quick at the 12-hour earlier this year, but had some irregularities on that car, unfortunately, a bit out of their control that they got pinged for, but they're looking for redemption this weekend, and they've been very fast over the course of the weekend.
You mentioned the 12-hour. It's certainly chalk and cheese weather-wise, isn't it? Have a look at the quality of sunshine we've got on this beautiful Sunday.
Class D leader early in this race, a combination that expects to go well, and perhaps a little bit of an unknown in terms of an outright quantity, but Gary Holt teaming up with his good friend Ryan McLeod from Racer Industries as we see a pass for second place on the racetrack. John Bow slipping back one, the Walls getting through.
It's a bit of an unusual situation. We kind of think that John Bow on the number 28 car would be a little bit further up the pack, but maybe just something a little bit not quite right with that BMW.
But if I know John Bow, I would think this combination has an absolute set strategy that they're going to run to today. And I think they've probably set themselves a lap time. There'll be no deviation from that. They'll run to that as long as they need to, and then John Bow can plug himself back in the car a little bit later on the race, a turn of speed, and that's when they'll need it. But this car's strong suit, as we saw at the 12-hour this year, is endurance, and they think they can go this race with one less stop than the Mitsubishi Lancers, which could add up to 1 to 1.5 minutes over the course of this race. Here goes the West car up the inside, just defensive enough to cover his line into the corner, but gets the job done on exit.
Yeah, just cocks a leg over the ripple strip as well, slides through nicely, shuffles Bow back another position.
So the GWS personnel car. Now this is the car Gary Holt has raced in the opening stages of this year, sold it after Phillip Island, and JB sort of was part of the package when Peter O'Donnell bought the car. Not only did he buy a great race car, but he got himself a fairly handy co-driver as well. And in fact, the man that won the last production car endurance race held at this racetrack way back in '95.
Yeah, a little bit of history for John Bow, isn't it? Knows his way around a racetrack to 3, certainly has the endurance goods under the tyres, and I think it was inked in the contract that the car had to be sold with him as part and parcel of it. If he didn't go, the car stayed where it was.
Well, he would have enforced that, I think, because he loves driving it.
He does indeed.
He has such a good time and really revels driving this race car and trying to get a good result. As we see the Quins looking up the inside into turn 9, he's not offering up much resistance, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're driving to a plan at the moment, John Bow. Peter O'Donnell will jump in that car at the first pit stop, and they will go through this 6-hour race. The Subaru behind them coming under some pressure from the Hankook Tyres car as well. They should be a bit of a dark horse as this race goes on.
Yeah, it's a game of tactics, this one, really, isn't it? It's not a matter of, well, we'll go out for 10 or 20 laps and sort of see how we go. We've got a plan for the full 6 hours, and it is a timed race as well. It goes from the time that we start for 6 hours, and that's where we'll go from there. And also, we'll talk a little bit later about the driver time breaks that we need to have.
We'll take a break. There's more from the Dial Before You Dig 6 Hour when we come back. We're back at Eastern Creek Raceway, the Dial Before You Dig Australian 6-hour endurance race. And this is the battle for 14th position between two unlikely suspects, Richard Crowell, Dave Knoll, and our expert today, Marcus Sikanovic, joining us now as we get stuck into the second hour of this motor race. Marcus, welcome to you. An interesting battle, Falcon versus Astra. Not what you'd usually see.
No, well, we usually see Ford versus Holden, but not Falcon versus Astra. Like, it's quite a mix, and here you see the raw horsepower of the Falcon coming past the Astra, but there you see the how nimble the car is, the Astra, as it comes in under brakes here. And we should see it close up a little bit into turn 2.
Chris Delsmer and Dean Neville, two Shannons V8 touring car drivers, sharing that car. Dramas early in the motor race for the Boylan Transport FPV F6, Rod Barrett behind the wheel. They are in pit lane, and an early pit stop in this kind of race is the last thing you need.
Yeah, you're always looking to try and get, your first stint, all the way to actually your first fuel stop, perhaps tyres. To have an unscheduled pit stop is always not a good sign.
And bonnet up as well. So dramas early for Ford's hopes in the Dial Before You Dig 6 hour. There's the Honda Integra Ute. It is now missing its rear hatch and front glass as well.
Looks quite sporty, doesn't it?
It does. I hope they've put some ballast in that too, because it might find itself underweight at the end of the motor race.
The aero's quite special too, I think.
Yeah, not wrong. Might be struggling for a bit of aero balance around some of these fast corners. On board the R Sport Renault Clio. Now, this is a brand new car in every sense of the word. as in it was literally finished Friday night. And it ran much of Saturday without the third gear. They've had all sorts of supply issues from France getting parts for this car over. But they're here. They unveiled their motorsport participation R Sport with Bob Watson, the 1970 Australian Rally champion, in a Renault, helping them out. So great bit of history there, and great to see some of that support coming from the manufacturers in this type of racing.
It is great to see some international makes coming across, and yeah, let's hope that Renault makes it all the way to the end of the day, since they've put in such a big effort to try and get here, you know?
Huge effort for sure, as we see the BMW working its way around now. Our pit lane well and truly covered for you today. Let's go find out with Fletch in pit lane what's wrong with the FPV Typhoon.
Rod, you're not too happy, mate. Tell us the story.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've done a turbo. We did one yesterday as well. Car's running very well. We had a very conservative plan just to hang back and build up through the race, but unfortunately, coming out of Corporate Hill, changed into fourth gear, and she stuttered a little bit, and then running down the hill, when we changed into third and accelerated out of the hairpin, there was absolutely nothing there. So we knew what it was straight away. Lucky we were on that part of the circuit so we could get back pretty early, but the guys will go through and fix it, and hopefully get these guys back in the race.
That is the last thing you want, just a handful of laps into a 6-hour race to have something like that go, but at least they're trying to get back out there.
Let's hope they get back out there, but as a driver, you know, I've been in that situation once before. It is just heartbreaking, you know. You put in all the hours, all the miles to try and get the car there and get it, you know, get it around, and then you have a mechanical failure like that.
Conroy Motorsport back in pit lane trying to secure the bonnet on their Honda. That's the bonnet that flung up on the car in the morning warm-up. They actually received the black flag then to go and make sure that bonnet was secure so we don't have a repeat of that. There's the team car. Peter Conroy and Mark Braham, very experienced competitor behind the wheel of that car. They were very consistent at Bathurst, and no one really knew where they were running all day. And then we looked at the results at the end of the last hour, and they were up inside the top 5. So that sort of quietly kind of approach often works in this kind of race.
It does indeed, the quiet achiever, you know, so it's good that they had that result of the 12-hour, and they look like they're doing a fantastic job here this weekend so far. Close
battle between one of the West Surfing Products car and Tony and Clark Quinn, the VIP Pet Foods entry. And don't think that this is an anomaly from Team VIP. These guys are becoming somewhat of an expert in enduro racing, not so much in the Evo, but in Porsches as well. They've been racing in Dubai and Bahrain and all sorts of fascinating places.
Yeah, you've seen the Quinn family a fair amount overseas. Like I think they've made an appearance at Daytona 24-hour.
Yeah.
You know, Nürburgring. Yeah. Okay. It's great to see them getting out and about. Probably, you know, there's Clark looking on the screen, seeing how Dad's doing.
The most relaxed driving combination I think you'd ever see in a motor race anywhere.
They are quite funny. We were pitted next to them one year there at the 12-hour, and it's just a barrel of laughs watching them up and down pits and in the shed stuff.
Now here's some traffic, and traffic will play a role in this race as well as the Hankook car comes up behind the GWS BMW. This is for position, working their way through. How do you handle this and manage it over a course of a long race when you're trying to get through these slower cars?
It is a little bit difficult, but you know, you just have to keep your wits about you and try and pick the lines through.
So Warren, you're not in the driver's seat, but you're closely monitoring the times there of Stewie.
Yeah, look, Stuart's doing a fantastic job out there. Got off to a good lead and just really sort of conserving the car, just holding a nice lead. So he's doing a fantastic job.
That is a theory for you guys, conserving. What's it like though when you're in the fastest wheels out there, but you've got to maintain pace?
Yeah, look, it's hard. You've got to try and sort of just think towards the end of the race. It's more important that we're here at the 5.5-hour mark, and if need be, then we can sprint for the flag. But there's no good going out trying to go too hard too soon and sort of hurting the car. So it's all about just sort of managing the pace, trying to sort of manage our gap to the field and the guys around us, and we'll see what happens at the end.
But how do you measure that as a driver? You're getting radio help?
Yeah, the guys are on the radio, keeping us sort of up to date with what we're doing and what the guys around us are sort of doing. So as Stuart's doing, he's just sort of keeping a nice, comfortable sort of 6-7 second buffer, and I think he'll probably stretch that out a little bit more now.
There's Julie Nemi in pit lane with Warren Luff co-driving the 55 car, the West Surfing Products TMR Lancer, with Stewie Costera as the Hadrian Morale Graham Moore car enters pit lane. It must be nice just to maintain a 6 or 7 second buffer seemingly at will like they are.
Yeah, it would be great. It is difficult in any car to try and maintain a 1 second buffer, let alone a 7 second buffer, but no, they're doing a great job currently.
And they mentioned Alan Heafy in that interview, a man with so much experience in these kind of races, so you can bet that TMR not only will have their strategy right, but pit stops as well will just be bang on the money.
Yeah, definitely. They you know, from the 12-hour, they were very quick in their pit stops. The strategies were great, so I can't see why this would be any different.
They're coming up already to place a lap on the Riffa de Goston Commodore, so that shows the pace these cars have got. And expected to run a little bit shorter than the BMW and the Subaru as well in terms of their fuel load. They use fuel a little bit quicker, so that will cost them a little bit time. They'll be stopping maybe 1 or 2 times more often as we see a change of position here. John Bowe coming under pressure from the Jim Hunter Racing Subaru. Barton Moore and Gavin Bullis behind the wheel of that car. It's early stages of the dial before you dig 6-hour, Marcus. And this dicing for position, it's been relentless, but the GWS car slipping back to the bottom half of the top 10.
It looks like it's slipping back, but I think, like you said earlier in the in the commentary there, that John and
Gav Bullis, yep,
were trying to stick to a probably a race strategy, and trying to nurse and conserve the tyres of that BMW being a rear-wheel drive compared to the Subaru being four-wheel drive. You definitely have to maintain the rear tyres a lot more so than the Subaru, as we see the Subaru sort of come in underneath quite comfortably, good balance, and that shows you the four-wheel drive, how balanced it is around the back section here, whereas they have to really maintain the throttle control on the rear of the BMW.
It must be frustrating as a driver when you always want to go out and drive as hard as you can, to have this pace set in the back of your mind. I've got to do this, I've got to do this, can't race this guy.
Oh, it's very frustrating, very frustrating. No, you've got a great car underneath you, and to the point where you have to just pace and maintain, it can be very frustrating.
Great onboard pictures from the little Renault. Might not be the fastest car on the racetrack this weekend. One of the prettiest, though. Comes up very nicely. And that's actually having a dice with another one of the new cars in the field this weekend, the Kirkhams and their Ford Fiesta XR4 running in Class D. Look at the little Toyota Yaris behind them as well. Remarkable little car that just keeps going round and round. And to try and aim to make a race on just 2 pit stops is pretty remarkable stuff.
That is pretty impressive, and to see like the fuel economy, I guess, if they're going to try and make it on 2, it'd be interesting to see if they can make it to the end.
And Bob Holden driving as well. What a great story that is.
That is a great feat. I remember racing with Bob and the Legends Ute race at Mount Panorama there. It was a great experience there a couple of years back.
Of course, we should mention man sitting alongside me, a former Australian V8 Ute champion and a Commodore Cup champion, and just for kicks, he did it in the same year as well.
Oh, thanks, Kralsey. Yeah, that was a great year. Really enjoyed that year.
Very, very successful indeed. Dial Before You Dig sponsoring us for this race today, of course, as part of the Shannons Nationals. We should mention Bendix Brakes on board as Class A sponsor, the high performance rear wheel drive class. And this race split into different categories. Class B, car on screen there, is the rear wheel drive high performance class. That's a Class C car, which is the front wheel drive high performance cars, turbocharged cars. And then the production sports cars in Class D, like the Holden Astra we've already spoken about, the Lauren Gray Motorsport, Toyota Corolla, the Renaults we've seen as well. So it gives a really great opportunity for lots of different makes and models and drivers to get a chance to compete for a trophy, I guess, and try and win their class within this race.
It's great to see, and especially the lower categories, or the smaller cars, it is very, very competitive. They might not have the outright speed to some of these bigger cars, but knowing these drivers, they're just as competitive as the guys are up the front. So
yeah, and over the course of a race like this, those are the cars that tend to creep up the leaderboard. The guys at the front are going flat out. They might have some reliability issues, and it's not unusual to see a car like this, for instance, the Mazda 3 MPS, somewhere inside the top 10 at the end of the race.
No, it's the old saying, just slowly but surely, and just keep chipping away, and the results will come, and that's usually what happens to these smaller cars.
Now, results not coming for the Hadrian Morel car. They're in pit lane again. Plagued with dramas, this team, throughout the 2010 season as they develop these brand new Mazda 3s. Osborne Motorsport, though, very, very experienced operation, so they'll go to work and try and get that car back on the racetrack. Here's a comparo, V8 to turbo four-wheel drive. What are we going to see here?
Initially off the turn, you should see the four-wheel drive, sort of get the good jump, but the big V8 should be able to stretch his legs and catch up as you see it sort of cruising under brakes, but then the four-wheel drive comes back on and drives off the corner again.
These turbos are just the ultimate package, aren't they? They're not only quick in a straight line, but under brakes and out of the corners especially. They're so strong.
They're a great little race car, and previous results have shown that.
Yeah, that's why they're filling a great deal of the positions inside the top 6 in this motor race, with only the Subaru and the BMW up in there to really try and wave the flag for other manufacturers in this race to try and get up there amongst it. So these two driving together, Chris Delsmert, the man from the Blue Mountains, Century 21 Realtor, made his debut in the Shannons V8 Touring Car Series at Winton just a few weeks ago and did very, very well. And his co-driver is Dean Neville, who ran a BA Falcon there and actually won a race. So a pretty handy combination, used to racing fast V8 Falcons.
It's always great to have a bit of supercar experience behind you when you come back to these slightly smaller categories. That it always comes through.
Easy to go from a faster car to a slower one and readjust that way?
Yes, it is. It is. It's harder to go from a slower car to a faster car, but the opposite direction is a lot easier.
So we see the safety stop car. So now here's the second of the Osborne Motorsport cars getting in. This is the Colin Osborne, Rick Bates entry.
Rather slow driver change. They must be putting a big load of fuel in, so this must be one of one or two stops that they're trying to achieve.
And as you guys would know from your experience in racing, for instance, the Mustang this year, fuel goes in first driver change, then you do the tyres. You can't do them all at once.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, but we could really speed the stops up. But I think if you got the car up in the air on one side trying to do one set of tyres and you're trying to put fuel in, it'd just get a bit messy. So I guess for safety issues for pit crew, one job at a time.
And there's no quick release wheel nuts here. These are 5 studs, old school rattle guns, the old school tyre changes.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit slow, a little bit interesting. Makes the obviously the pit guys on the keep their wits about them and on the ball and make sure you get all the wheel nuts done up tight.
And you need to be careful too, because they're very, very strict about pit lane infringements. And if you leave one piece over the line, a loose wheel nut, anything like that, you're going to be in strife.
A simple little mistake, and that could cost you the race. So the guys are pretty much on the ball. They don't want to be doing silly things like that, and hopefully not getting infringements.
Well, what about as a crew? How much preparation would you do as a crew in terms of pit stop practice and working out to make sure those 1%ers, I guess, are not going to factor into the results of the motor race?
Well, walking up and down pit lane, you see a lot of the guys, pre-race, they're out there practicing the pit stops, jacking the car up. Oh, here we see a flat tyre. That's not...
So that's the flat right rear tyre of the BFGT. We just saw before Chris Delsmer and Dean Neville. I tell you what, you talk some guys up and they hit pit lane.
Yeah, it's always the way in that the jinx. No, it looks like there's got a bit of an issue there. Just looks like wear and tear. The big heavy Falcon is obviously putting a lot of load on that right rear tyre, trying to get the drive, and it clearly said, I've had enough, thank you.
And of course, corners like that, we saw turn 2, long, almost 180-degree corner, left-hand bend. All the weight in that car is going to be on that right rear tyre, so that's the one that's going to cop the stress.
And it doesn't help it at all. And obviously, we just saw a clear case of the tyre letting go, and that's it for the day for that tyre.
We'll hear from more from that team. Fletcher's down in pit lane. He's talking to Dean Neville.
Dean, how's the big XR8 travelling, mate?
Mate, it was going great. We were sitting in a couple of seconds back off our qualifying times, and it could have done it all day.
Mate, what happened with the back tyre?
Just failed, as you can see. There was nothing wrong. Never pitched a tyre anywhere, no curbs. The both things just let go.
Now, pit stop for our race leaders. They're in pit lane. Stuart Costera will jump out of the car. Warren Luff will jump in, and the well-drilled TMR Australia crew will go to work. You can see Stewie helping to bolt Warren Luff in that car, and they've set such a cracking pace in the opening stint of this motor race. This should be a pretty stress-free pit stop, you'd think, with a nice handy buffer to the cars behind and to the cars from second place pitting as well the walls. So a nice relaxed pit stop for our race leaders, get everything done nice and smoothly and get back out on the racetrack.
That's the key when you're doing a driver change is you want to get in the car reasonably quick, but at the same token, if your heart rate's up like it should be, you want to try and control that and keep it, get the seatbelts done up and everything in, nice, comfortable, and then out so you don't speed in pit lane.
So TMR Australia go to work. They've got 2 other cars on the racetrack, so they'll be a busy team today. Team VIP Pet Foods looking to peel off as well in pit lane. So looks to be the first scheduled stop for Tony and Clark Quinn. Clark will take over, and that will hand things over at the front of the field while the pit stop shuffle works over, at least to the number 11 TMR car of Inky Tulloch, the multiple Australian and New Zealand Super Truck Racing champion, Jones, who's his co-driver for this weekend. A bit of a tarmac rally ace, making his first real start in a circuit race. What a scene to do it on.
It is a great scene to have the first endurance race back at Eastern Creek. Here we go, we can see the Quinn family doing a driver change here.
Matching helmets as well, that's nice.
Very smashing.
Yeah, going well, Tony and Clark Quinn. Clark jumping in. Let's go down to pit lane. Here's more from Fletch.
I'll tell you what, we mentioned earlier about grueling conditions. Have a go at this tyre, and imagine if this was a tyre on your car at home. Take a closer look here. It has been absolutely ripped to shreds. The temperature here, you can't even hold your hand on top of that. But just give you an idea how hot, which represents the conditions that these tyres are under here at Eastern Creek.
Thanks, Fletch. Yeah, by looking at that tyre, it looks like he's, obviously giving it a hard time on the right-hand rear, but it does look like he may have even caught a curb, even possibly to have the big shred on the inside of the tyre there. So very sad day for that, but hopefully they can get back out on track and change tyre and keep going.
Pit stop's well and truly underway now as this race progresses. The dial before you dig Australian 6 hour. We saw the Class C leaders in. Jake Camilleri in the Mazda 3 MPS. We also saw a car running inside the top 3 in Class D, the Lauren Gray Motorsport Toyota Corolla. Lauren Gray and Jake Williams sharing that car as number 11 hits in another stop from TMR Australia. So Inky Tulloch will jump out of that car. Stewie Jones will jump behind the seat of the Evo 10.
Another slick stop, obviously, by the TMI guys there. So
they're so good, aren't they? Pit stop for the Jim Hunter team as well. Barton Moore out of the car. Gavin Bullis will jump in. A man used to driving 700 horsepower 1970s Mustangs, all of the time sideways, I might add, having called lots of Gavin's racing. He jumps behind the wheel, something slightly different for him, but I'm sure he'll enjoy it. He's been very, very quick throughout practice, matching Barton Moore's pace. A strong combination this weekend for the Jim Hunter Subaru team. As this race starts to settle itself down, pit stops underway. Cars now on their second drivers. Scotty Nicholas, for example, takes the wheel of the Grand Prix Mazda 3 MPS. Jake Camilleri having done his job. This is a combination with a track record in the past and a car that just keeps going round and round very consistently. Actually, they would have been praying for rain this weekend. That Mazda 3, when it's wet, is very, very strong on an outright level.
It looks quite good now in the dry conditions. And here we can see another driver change happening.
I'm going to take a break. There's more for the dial before you dig 6 hour. We're just getting started. Don't go away. Thanks to Dial Before You Dig. It's the Australian 6 hour at Eastern Creek Raceway. It's part of the Shannons Nationals. Richard Craill and Dave Knoll with you for this stanza of the motor race. Marcus Kanovic's disappeared to win another championship or something while he takes a break. We're looking at car number 4, the Policina Motorsports entry, running around in 10th place at the moment. They're running in the Bendix High Performance all-wheel drive class.
Yeah, Policina, normally known here at Eastern Creek for driving a big V8 engine thing. He's decided to go sideways or forward, take your pick, into the Evo 9, and not doing too bad at the moment. As we watch John Bowen, the number 28, passing Barry Nesbitt in the Donut King. Donuts. Big HSV as well.
Now this is for position. This is for 6th and 7th place. A battle of the Evo Lancers, the Hankook Tyres car from Conroy Motorsport, coming under pressure from the Matt Cherry Glenn Crimp number 10 car, running 7th. So a dice for position there. We'll follow the progress of that. Those two cars coming forwards after a tough start to the motor race in that very competitive opening couple of hours where everyone was jostling for position. We saw quite a few lead changes, quite a few position swaps. Now everyone's settled down and the hard work really begins in the middle of this motor race. Here's our Class C, well, one of the leading cars in that class, the Mazda 3 MPS. Grand Prix Mazda, Scotty Nicholas, the saloon car race behind the wheel now.
Yeah, hustling the Century 21 car, Chris Delsmer, who had a bit of a problem with the tyre. We had a bit of a chat to one of the other drivers a little while ago talking about the issues with that.
Class D competitor, the Mini Cooper S, the Trevor Keane, Peter Dane and Steve Cramp, a former GTP and production car and open wheel ace as well back in the 90s. Steve Cramp out of Adelaide as they pop the boot, pop the fuel in. That'll go down. Crew member will run over the line and then the crew can get on board with changing tyres as the Donut King HSV R8 Club Sport comes into the pit lane as well.
Yeah, Tony Alford and Barry Nesbitt doing a pretty good job at the moment.
And currently running in the top 3 in Class D, the safety stop redder. We've seen some great action from them. Richard Gartner jumping out, Carl Shembry and Francois Joy sharing the co-driver duties there. Have a look at the heat in the front brake, and it's actually on fire. We often make jokes about drivers being on fire during a race. Well, that car really is. That's how hot they are as this race goes on.
Yeah, you can certainly see a bit of brake pad cooking those donuts well and truly inside the wheels. Looking at car number 55 now, that's the Stuart Castillo and Warren Luff entry, sitting in first place, passing the number 10 entry, who's currently sitting all the way back in 7th, Rich.
Yeah, and that's to put them a lap down. And did you see Luffy as he drove past? Just a bit of a wave to his teammate. Thanks very much for letting us go through without any dramas. Now, the P2 car in pit lane, Peter O'Donnell has jumped in. He will assume the driving duties. John Bowe has done a mighty job in this first stint. Oh, Gav Bullis turns the Subaru round.
Now, who says you can't drift an all-wheel drive car?
Well, Gavin Bullis could drift a wheelchair if he needed to. The man just likes driving sideways. That's not the kind of thing they want at this stage of the motor race, though. It's going to cost them some time. A spin up at turn 12, just spun to the inside there. No visible damage on the Subaru STI, and they'll live to fight another day.
Yeah, looks like, and he lost the 2 places as well, which is good news, and absolutely right. No damage to the car. Managed to get it fired up. Back down this lovely long straight here at Eastern Creek, and we are roughly about 90 minutes into this 6-hour race.
Gee, there's a long way to go, isn't there?
Talk about a 12-hour. This is only 6 weeks. Hey!
So pit stop for number 28. They're long stops compared to what we're used to in sort of motorsport, aren't they? But they get it all done, very methodical, and car number 8 drives into the garage. Now, there is a reason that, a method behind the madness. You might think, well, why are they going into the garage? That sort of signifies real sorts of dramas, but you can actually have more people work on the car at any one time when you're in the garage, when you're behind that red line that sort of differentiates the garages and pit lane. There's only a certain number of people allowed to touch the car when you're over that line.
Is it 4 people, Rich? That's the deal?
I believe so. As we see Dice, Stuart Jones will be behind the wheel of car 11, and he's passing the car we just saw inverted at turn 12. Gavin Bullis, as we see 2 of the Evos now side by side, and this is for position 2 as they run down the front straight. The Quinn VIP Pet Foods car moves to 2nd. So they're charging forwards, Team VIP. We thought before the race they were going to be one of the dark horses, and they're proving to be very, very competitive.
Another worm's eye view as you work your way around here at Eastern Creek.
On board with Des Wall behind the wheel of car 38. Let's have a listen, let's have a look at the Evo Lancer. As they come into pit lane, so not much of an onboard view down the straight we were hoping for, but this could be interesting as they go into the lane. This is a replay of that position. The 11 car just running a little bit wide, and Quinn just with enough room. Almost rub panels.
See the car hopping around there, Rich, as they accelerated out and changing gears.
So the East Motorsport car with David and Des Wall sharing the driving duties today. They've gone into pit lane to make their stop. And this is our race leader just imperiously powering on. And TMR Australia, Luffy and Costera, so evenly matched throughout practice and qualifying. Their 2 qualifying laps were split by literally a 1/10 of a second. That's it. The 2 laps that each of those drivers did, as we see a pit stop for the 11 car.
Yeah, the qualifying times were fantastic, weren't they? Down to about a 1:44 around the 3.9 kilometre circuit. And in the actual race, Rich, we haven't seen anything much over 1:46, 1:47. Consistency.
Yeah, and consistency, the key, as we spoke about earlier on, as the 38 car rolls down the lane. So their stop completed, and they're having a pretty good run so far, looking to revenge, I guess, a very disappointing run at the endurance race earlier this year. That car with a lot of speed and 2 very capable drivers.
Steve, you were caught in just now. How was your drive?
Yeah, it was good. I was just trying to look after the tyres, obviously. That was my main game. I didn't want to push too hard. It's hard with other cars around you trying to push hard on tyres, and I was just trying to concentrate on keeping the tyres in a good condition. That was just the name of the game.
Steve Jones down there in pit lane with our Julie Nemi, who's had a very good stint in the number 11 car he's sharing with Inky Tully. As pit stops are underway, the R-Sport Renault Clio 197, the brand new car, getting through its stop okay by the looks of it. This development process continues for them. And the first pit stop for the Bezcorp Security number 16 Toyota. After a long, long way into the race, remarkable endurance from that car on one tank. And bear in mind, no one driver, Dave, can do more than 3.5 hours behind the wheel in this race. So they kind of have to pit, otherwise they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, the economy on that thing's absolutely astonishing. And to go to the other point as well, they need to do a minimum of 1.5 hours too. So if you have a 2-driver team, it's a bit of a fine juggling act, isn't it, to work out who comes in, who comes out, especially with a car like the Yaris with such economy.
The GWS BMW is running nose to tail.
Interesting point of view there, isn't it? Watching the driver's hands, how much input he's actually putting in, just a little bit of a slide around on the rim.
So you can tell that Peter O'Donnell's got John Bow working with him, getting him up to speed in this car. Very similar driving style, very smooth, very fluid, as you have to be around this place, as we see Tony and Clark Quinn continuing their run. Clark doing a good job behind the wheel of the VIP Pet Foods car. Oh no, dramas for the Matt Cherry entry. He's sharing with Glenn Cripp. He's gone round at turn 12, which has been a bit of a hot spot today.
Well, how's this? You see two all-wheel drive cars, not known for losing traction on a dry track. Two of them have already spun.
At the same spot too. Both of them ended up on the inside of the circuit.
You expect it from a HSV or something like that, and that's not to have a go at the mark, but here we go. Two all-wheel drive cars managed to fire it back up, and have a look at the freight train of all-wheel drive cars coming right up behind him.
Yeah, well, to put them another lap down, the three TMR cars are all on the start-finish straight at the moment, because that's the leading car. That's the Stuart Costera and Warren Luff West Surfing Products car, the sister car. There's two of them in this race for the first time this year. And the second place car, the number 11 entry, which is a lap behind, just at the back of your picture there. You can see it, that Jones and Tulloch have been driving today. The Hankook car goes up the inside. Quiet Achievers. Once again, that combination, Mark Brame and Peter Conroy, going very nicely indeed.
The other car out on track is the Ford Festiva, doing a pretty reasonable job. It's the XR4 model that they're racing in this one. And you can just see how tight the suspension is on this as they go around on the right-hand turn. You can just watch the rear left just to start to kick up, literally hitting over the top of the ripple strip there.
Yeah, saw some photos after practice and qualifying with that car three-wheeling its way around. Quite a stiffly built car, the Fiesta. Great little car. The Kirkhams doing a good job with it on debut for this motor race. And what a place to make a debut in a 6-hour production car race, but they're doing a good job and fighting for Class D positions. As we see a black flag for car 97, so a drive-through penalty will be needed for the Richard Gartner, Francois Joy and Carl Shembry car. And they'll have to cruise down pit lane at 40 k's an hour and serve a penalty for what I'd imagine will be a pit stop infringement, because there's been a few of those over the course of this race.
Yeah, it's always little things too, that little red line saying don't cross me, and unfortunately a couple of tools or a couple of people have walked over the line inadvertently, we have to stress too, but unfortunately that's what happens in motorsport. Something 50-cent piece proverbial goes bang. And as you see the result, another one, another black flag. This is a Tony Alford and Barry Nesbitt, number 25 HSV, a black flag. Do you think, Richard, could be for a pit lane infringement?
I think it quite possibly could be, Dave. Now we're seeing a stop here for the 97 crew, so they're going to serve their stop. They're going to have to serve a drive-through after that. Whoa, moment there for the BMW, getting it a bit loose on the exit of 9.
Yeah, coming out very, very hot indeed. Just dripping the rear left wheel over into the dirt. No harm done.
Oh, and have a look at this. How busy is this? Down the start-finish straight, two class cars dicing. Right in the thick of it, 3 wide towards turn 1. The Conroy Honda, windowless at the front and rear, goes past its class rivals to put them a lap down. The Mini Cooper S, the Trevor Keane entry. And then we've got two Class A cars coming through. The Quins being chased by our race leaders. It is so busy at turn 2 at Eastern Creek at the moment. The dial before you dig 6 hour. And this is the part of endurance racing we spoke about earlier with Marcus, was that it just gets so busy at times, and you've just got to keep your wits about you and be smart and intelligent about your racing.
Now just watching the Gray and Williams car, looking to have a dice down the inside of the Gartner number 97.
Yeah, and that's for position 2, Dave. So Lauren Gray, who's behind the wheel, 18-year-old Jake Williams started that car. They've moved forward, so a good run from the Melbourne-based outfit in the Toyota Corolla Sportivo.
There's a number 21 car back in the pits, looking again at that right rear tyre, wondering if they've had another flat. On board now with the number 97 car. Let's have a listen.
I'll tell you what, it's still on with these two. These two have been going at it for a couple of laps now. The Mini Cooper and the Ford Fiesta XR4 side by side over the bridge and down into turn 4. A great dice for Class D honours.
Yeah, it's an underrated car, that Fiesta, isn't it? Drives like an absolute steam train and handles fantastically well around the tight turns, as we see here at Eastern Creek on the back part of the circuit. Doesn't quite, of course, have the outright speed down the main straight.
Well, given it's a new car especially, the way that they've got that car up to speed, even with some teething dramas over practice and qualifying, is very impressive. And I guess all they need now is a good solid 6 hours of racing to work out what that car does, how it responds, and do some real solid development on it. Now, third in Class C, pits the GWS Personnel 27 car. Garth Duffy sharing this car with Al Shepherd, a great supporter of motorsport and production car racing in particular.
Yeah, it's the master and the apprentice of sorts, isn't it? Garth Duffy, around 20, 21 years of age, would normally be in the Commodore Cup this year, as we watch a replay now of this battle between the Mini and the Fiesta.
It's a 6-hour race, guys.
It's almost like V8 ute driving, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Good stuff. Side-by-side racing, it's what you want to see, isn't it? And we're approaching the 80th lap mark, so we're a long way through. Haven't really taken time to go and work out how many laps they're going to complete. Oh, contact at turn 12. Up the inside, the Fiesta. Gee, it's working hard.
That's a
This
Maori
battle for
kiss.
Class D honours, and another black flag, this time for car 16. So that's the Justin Matthews Bob Holden car. So the little Toyota Yaris is going to have to serve a drive-through penalty, and it is for a pit lane infringement.
That's something different here at Eastern Creek. We haven't seen that over the last hour or so.
It's the 1%ers that you've just got to get right, and that's what can change a motor race for you. We'll take a break. When we come back, more from the Dial Before You Dig Australian 6 Hour.